All right, welcome to The Explainer. If you're studying for your PMP exam, you know quality is a huge topic. But let's be honest, it can feel a bit vague. Well, in this explainer, we're going to cut right through the jargon and give you the clear, practical understanding of project quality management you really need to nail those questions.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to figure out what quality even means in the PMP world. Then, we'll dive into the core principles behind it all. After that, we'll get real about the cost of quality. And finally, we'll look at the actual tools you're going to use. Right, let's get into it.
So, Adam, picture this, because it happens to every project manager. A stakeholder comes to you and says, "We need better quality." It's so vague. And look, your first instinct is probably to just jump in and start making changes, right? But the PMP way is different. Your first job is to stop, take a breath, and ask, what does better quality actually mean to you?
So, to even start answering that question, we first need to get our heads around two pairs of terms that constantly trip people up on the exam. Getting these definitions right is absolutely fundamental.
Okay, this is probably the biggest, most critical distinction you need to understand. Quality is not about how fancy or expensive something is. It's about one thing. Does it meet the requirements? Grade, on the other hand, is all about the features. So for your project, Adam, the real question for that stakeholder is, are you talking about fewer bugs, which is a quality problem, or are you asking for more features, which is a change in grade?
Let's make this really simple. Think of a basic old-school mobile phone that just makes calls. If it makes those calls perfectly every time, that's a high-quality, low-grade product. Now think about a brand new smartphone, packed with features, that crashes all the time. That's high grade, but it's low quality. For your PMP exam and for your projects, the goal is always high quality, no matter what the grade is.
Okay, on to our next critical pair. In day-to-day life, we kind of use these words to mean the same thing, but for the PMP exam, they are very, very different. The easiest way to think about it is this. Precision is all about consistency, and accuracy is all about being correct or truthful.
You know, the best way to think about this is with a target. If you throw 5 darts and they all land in a tight little cluster on the outer ring, well, that's high precision, but it's low accuracy. Your results are consistent, but they're consistently wrong. Now, what if your darts are scattered all over the place, but they're generally centered around the bullseye? That's kind of higher accuracy, but very low precision. As a project manager, you want both. You want your results to be accurate and precise, hitting the bullseye every single time.
Okay, so now that we've got our definitions straight, let's see how this all fits into the core principles that PMI wants you to live and breathe. These aren't just rules to memorize, they are the why behind everything you do in quality management. At the end of the day, Adam, your number one job is customer satisfaction. Simple as that. And that really means two things. First, your project has to meet the spec. That's conformance. But second, it has to actually be useful for them. That's fitness for use. You could have a product that ticks every single box on the specification sheet, but if it doesn't actually solve the customer's problem, you have failed on quality.
And this leads us to a classic trap, something called gold plating. It's so tempting, isn't it, to add a few extra features that you think the client will absolutely love. But from a PMP point of view, you are not adding value. You are adding unapproved scope. And that just brings in new risks, new costs, and probably new bugs. Just stick to what was agreed.
Now this, Adam, this is a phrase you should probably tattoo on your brain. It's a core PMP philosophy. You have to focus on prevention over inspection. It is always cheaper and way more effective to prevent mistakes from happening in the first place through good processes, solid training, and proper design than it is to try and find them and fix them later on.
And finally, just remember that quality isn't some gate you pass through once and then forget about. It's a constant cycle of improvement. It's also a shared responsibility. You know, while you, Adam, are the one who's ultimately accountable for the project's quality, it's not all on you. Everyone has a role to play, from senior management setting the overall policy down to every single team member owning the quality of their own work.
Right, so how do you go to your boss and justify spending money on things like training or better tools when you could just, crack on with the work? Well, you do it by understanding something called the cost of quality, or COQ.
So what is COQ? It basically breaks down into two big buckets. There's the money you spend to get things right. We call that the cost of conformance. And then there's the money you lose when things go wrong, and that's the cost of non-conformance.
So you've got your good costs. These are investments in things like training and testing.
And then you have your bad costs. This is the price you pay for failure, like rework, bug fixes, and warranty claims. And the whole point of COQ is that a little investment in the good stuff saves you a fortune on the much, much bigger bad stuff later on.
And when you actually put the numbers down in a cost-benefit analysis, it's a no-brainer. Look at this example. Spending £8,000 on prevention activities, like automated testing, gives you a massive £20,000 return because you're cutting down on all that expensive rework. This is the kind of language that gets stakeholders to listen.
Okay, so we've established that investing in quality is a smart move. But how do we actually do it? Let's look at some of the key tools and techniques you'll be using to put all this theory into practice.
First up is the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. It's this really simple, but honestly incredibly powerful loop for continuous improvement. You just plan what you're going to do, you do it, you check your results against the plan, and then you act on what you've learned to make the next cycle even better.
Okay, another pair of terms that trips everyone up on the exam. Tolerances, that's the acceptable range set by your customer. It's their requirement. Control limits are totally different. They measure the natural statistical variation of your process. Your big goal is to have a process that's so stable and predictable that its control limits are way, way inside the customer's tolerances.
And here's a specific one to watch out for on your exam: the rule of 7. If you're looking at a control chart and you see 7 data points in a row, all on one side of the average line, that's a huge red flag. Even if nothing has technically broken yet, it's an early warning sign that your process is becoming unstable, and you need to investigate now.
Right, Adam? Here it is, the final revision sheet. We've put everything we've talked about onto one single slide for you. This is the big summary.
Look at this table. It's not just the concept. It links each one to a super simple, memorable example. Think of this as your exam flashcard. Use it to really lock in these key distinctions so you don't get caught out.
So here's the real point of all this. It's not about just memorizing terms for an exam. The real goal is to change how you act on your projects. The next time a stakeholder comes to you and asks for better quality, you're not going to guess. You'll have a whole framework of questions to turn that vague feeling into a specific, measurable requirement. So how are you going to use this tomorrow?